All right, council member, we are now live on YouTube. Council members Pinto and Henderson have joined us. I would just ask if they could turn their cameras on prior to the vote when on our one measure today, council member. Otherwise, you can get started when you begin, when you'd like.
I'm sorry. In terms of whether I can start or not, I didn't follow that.
I'm sorry, council member. You can begin when you're ready. I was just saying that for the other council members on, they'll just need to have their cameras on at the time of the vote.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Robert White. Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, council member at large and chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Today is November 19th, 2021, and we are meeting virtually on Zoom. The time is now 1:05 p.m., and I'm calling to order this additional meeting of the committee. We have a quorum consisting of at-large council member Christina Henderson and Ward 2 council member Brooke Pinto. Today, we're considering proposed resolution 24-223, the 2 Patterson Surplus Declaration and Approval Resolution of 2021. DC Code Section 10-801 establishes a process by which the executive can dispose of district-owned real property. The process involves administrative hearings and a written analysis, first to make sure that the district government doesn't need the property for its own use, and then to determine what private use is in the district's best interest. The resolution before us is one of a pair of resolutions from the mayor that must pass the council before she can lease out the property in Noma for mixed-use redevelopment. The Committee on Business and Economic Development has already marked up the corresponding disposition resolution. As detailed in the committee report, 2 Patterson Street Northeast is currently a parking lot, but is zoned for high-density mixed use. It was kept undeveloped because we as a government thought we might need it to use as replacement housing for former tenants of Temple Courts, a subsidized housing community that we bulldozed 13 years ago and then failed to replace on a reasonable time frame. The Temple Courts replacement process remains a stain in our recent history, but DMPED tells us that the new units going up on the site now known as Northwest 1 will finally fulfill the district's promise. Last month, we held a hearing attended by DMPED and the developers who will build the new building should these resolutions pass. I'm excited by the prospect of 325 units earmarked for households making certain percentages below the district's median family income. Most of the remaining 255 units would be capped at 20% above the median family income. However, the Council Office on Racial Equity has raised some interesting points about how useful these units will be for reducing inequity. CORE points out that the median household income for Black households in the district is less than 1/3 of that of white households. This means that the total number of Black residents who could potentially live in most of these new so-called affordable units at 2 Patterson without becoming a rent burden is much lower than it initially appears. I also want to acknowledge CORE's concerns about the surplus and disposition process as a whole. 10-801 is an old pre-home rule statute, and just treating it like a checklist rather than finding ways to spark meaningful community engagement means that we miss opportunities to build more accountability. I think we're due for a careful review of 10-801, and I would greatly appreciate hearing from colleagues on this committee, as well as colleagues on the Committee on Business and Economic Development in the coming months with any ideas you and your networks may have. The cost-benefit analysis of these big private developments on public land is always tricky. The acre in Noma that we're talking about today is worth over $17 million. And we're going to let developers lease it for a century for $99 in exchange for the affordable housing they intend to build. Could we use this valuable resource to create even more stability for longstanding communities at risk of displacement? We asked a number of these questions on this point during our hearing, and DMPED believes the answer is no. And based on what we've heard from them, for right now, I am prepared to defer to their expertise. But it's important that we keep asking these questions to ensure that we are getting a return on the district's investment that it advances our overall housing development goals. We also have to continue to develop more robust, independent analyses of these deals. That's precisely why I wrote, passed, and funded the Economic Development Return on Investment Accountability Amendment Act, which has begun to result in useful reports. It's also why in the last budget, we provided funding for our ANCs to hire professional support for their negotiations with developers. As the RIA mentions, there's more we can do here, and I stand ready to partner with folks to see how we can improve this process going forward. For today, I'm moving this legislation forward because the proposed surplus and disposition appear on balance to be positive for the neighborhood and a better outcome in terms of affordability than many of the projects we've seen in the city. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, I move the committee print and report for PR 24-0223, the 2 Patterson Surplus Declaration and Approval Resolution of 2021, with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. I think that I heard all ayes, but let me just make sure. All opposed by indicate by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The resolution passes. The business before the committee has concluded. The time is now 1:10 p.m. and this additional meeting of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities is adjourned. Thank you to all 3 of you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.